Hello, here is the final video in a series of 3 looking at the Aberfan and London earthquake paper from many years ago, an exemplar paper, and in this video we're looking at paper 2 question 4, which is all about comparing writers' viewpoints and perspectives. So let's look at the question. So we need to look at both sources, the whole of them, compare how the writers convey their different ideas and perspectives of the events that they describe. What that's saying is we need to think about what the writer of source A feels about the Aberfan disaster, and we need to also work out what the writer of source B feels about the London earthquake. You will get 3 bullet points under the question in the exam paper. The first is reminding you to talk about their perspectives and to compare them. The second is remembering to include the writer's methods to show us how they convey those perspectives. So that can be language techniques, sentence methods, and so on. But also the third bullet point is reminding us to quote evidence from the extracts. And I think this is the trickiest of the 5 paper 2 questions, simply because it requires you to think carefully about gathering the information that you need before you actually start to write the response. When I teach this, I follow this cycle with students, and this process enables them to get all the information that they need as part of a planning process, really, in order to then be in a position to write the response. So we're going to be following this process. I haven't actually included the extracts here on this presentation. I'm sure they're easily available online, but just to save time, really, I'm going to be going straight into what we could talk about in order to write the response. So here we have, what I've done is for each extract, source A and source B, I have chosen 2 quotes from each, which I think I could use to infer what the attitudes of the writers are. So what you'll need to do in the exam is to look for these quotes in the exam and highlight them, and highlight quotes that you think give you a good idea of what they feel when they are writing this response, what they feel about what they're talking about. So we've got our evidence, so that's the bullet point, one of the bullet points obviously ticked off. So I'm going to be using these quotes. I would suggest this is a approximately 20-minute task, 16 marks. So I would, again, be realistic about what I could do. You're not probably going to have time to write a 10-page essay. This is, again, another short response. So you have to be realistic about what you could do. And I think I would want to use 2 quotes from each source rather than bite off more than I can chew. So 20 minutes, in effect, limits how much I can say. But I would want to do less well than a lot badly. So it's always quality, not quantity. Once I've got my quotes, I've got to work out what I think the methods are. So you can see here that I've looked at these quotes and I've said, oh, there's a metaphor, there's a verb, there's a declarative sentence, a rhetorical question. So again, I intend to use these methods in order to, in my response, in order to reinforce the perspectives of the writers. So the methods have to be in there as well, and that then ticks off another one of those bullet points that we saw when we looked at the question a minute ago. The next thing we have to consider is we have to come up with some words to actually describe their attitudes. This is, in effect, what you are comparing for question 4. So you're comparing what their attitudes, what their perspectives are. So horrified, shocked, awestruck, dismissive, worried. These are all words, these are all adjectives we use to describe how people feel. And in order to do well with question 4, paper 2, it's important that you include some of these words to show the examiner that you are comparing what the writers think, what their perspective and opinions are, rather than simply going back and writing another question 2 summary answer. The last thing we have to do in order to get more marks is to develop this. We can't just say, oh, well, the writer of source A feels shocked, because the examiner will say, well, why are they shocked? So we have to finish off by giving some insight, really, into what they've seen, what they've heard, what they've experienced which has made them have this attitude. And this is the last bit here in kind of this purpley colour. These are all reasons why they might have the attitude that they do. Again, I'm not going to go through this all. You can obviously stop it, but if we just pick the top right-hand box, why is the writer of source B dismissive and mocking? Well, to begin with, they trivialise the earthquake itself. It's not as serious as perhaps they think. It's not as horrific as Aberfan. They're well aware that the earthquake could have been worse. Just minor impacts of the quake. They don't feel in danger, maybe. But by the time you get to the end of that extract source B, that rhetorical question suggests that they are anxious because they don't quite know if more serious earthquakes are to come, and did they just get lucky this time. So in order to explain to the examiner and to compare properly what their attitudes are, we need to be able to say why they have the attitudes that they have. And chances are, a tip for this question is often put yourself in the shoes of the writer. Chances are if you saw or experienced what they did, you would probably feel the same. So you have to also try and work out why they have the views they do. So that's why question 4 needs a little bit of care and consideration and planning, because there's quite a lot of components to the answer. You need the quotes, the methods, the attitudes, and then the reasons why they have those attitudes. And now you're in a position to actually write the response. So again, I'm going to show you, I think, a more simple response, and then I'm going to show you a more successful response in terms of the number of marks it got. So this would probably get you a simple level. Perhaps it would get you 3 or 4 out of 16. The writer of source A seems shocked about what happened to Aberfan. He wants us to feel sorry for the children who died. He tells us that disaster struck the village and uses words like danger, whereas the writer of source B seems worried that another earthquake might happen again soon. They're comparing. They've got some quotes, but they haven't really told us in a lot of detail why they have those attitudes, and they haven't really developed it. So we need to provide evidence from both sources. We need to make sure that we're referring to writer's language and sentence methods. We need to make sure that we're using words to describe how they feel, how the writer feels. And also we need to give details about why they have the views that they do. So this would get you some marks, but it wouldn't get you many marks, perhaps as everybody would like. So if you're getting a grade 4 or above, if that's your prediction, then obviously you would need to develop this a little bit more. So this is what a more developed response looked like, as you can see, longer. And what I've done is I've also colour-coded some of the components of the mark scheme, evidence, techniques and attitudes to show you how it all fits together. So this student says each writer conveys their attitudes and perspectives about the disasters that they describe. In source A, the writer presents a horrified and shocked attitude about the Aberfan disaster, when they make reference to a wave of stupefying filth which instantly smothered more than 100 of them. This metaphor is comparing the coal to a wave, reinforces how inescapable the landslide was, and it is clear that the writer feels sympathy for the victims, many of them children, when they make reference to how the filth smothered them, as if they were being drowned or suffocated. The writer is horrified at the speed of destruction, aware of the unstoppable nature of the event. The writer uses a declarative to sum up the event as wanton and indifferent cruelty, conveying the anger that perhaps the disaster could have been avoided by not piling coal waste on the top of a valley. He may view the victims of the disaster as having paid the ultimate price for others' incompetence. However, the writer of source B conveys a dismissive and mocking attitude at first about the earthquake, saying that it upset furniture and broke crockery, which are hardly disastrous consequences. Perhaps the writer doesn't feel in any danger. Later in the extract, they present a more anxious and concerned attitude when they ask a rhetorical question, who can say what may await us, suggesting they are worried about a more serious quake happening at some point in the future, which may be more devastating and make them feel less safe. So this would, at a 16, get you perhaps, 13, 14, 15-ish, into the top band perhaps. But that's because they are clearly using the pink words to show they're comparing attitudes, they are using evidence in orange, and they're also consistently referring to some techniques as well. So even though this isn't a language question per se, you do need to bring forward your knowledge of language to help analyse their perspectives. Okay, so it's also worth bearing in mind as well that the extracts for paper 2 are often written in the first person from the I perspective. So the first person perspective is also a method, and that enables them obviously to talk about their own personal attitudes, which is in effect what you're being asked to analyse for this question. Okay, so that's another video there about paper 2 question 4. Remember, you need to find the evidence, as in the quotes, the methods, words to describe their attitudes, and also the reasons why they have those attitudes, what's happened to them, and what have they seen and experienced.